Minister, and to the officers, thank you very much. I might go to page 30 of Budget Paper 4, Volume 4. The majority of the questions are from around this section. And grants and subsidies, which covers a great many payments to a great many organisations. It's a budget line that will probably rely on a fair bit. Has the government reinstated funding yet for the APY Arts Collective? And if the government plans to, will the government back pay the grant to the date when funding was suspended?
The APY Arts Centre Collective, we undertook, as you're aware, a review. We had an independent review panel undertake that work, comprised of Megan Cracker, Anne Sybury and Cameron Costello. They did an extensive amount of work and collected a substantial amount of evidence. They formed the view that there was sufficient evidence to warrant referrals to ORIC and ACCC on certain governance matters and unconscionable conduct matters to ORIC and ACCC respectively. Those referrals have been made and I understand those federal organisations are currently investigating APY Arts Centre Collective until we know the conclusion of those investigations. That funding will continue to be paused.
The Minister's just said until we know the conclusion of those investigations. Can the Minister confirm what steps the state government or her office have made to engage with those organisations to discover at what point they will either take action or cease investigations?
There are current investigations. I think we are aware both our ORIC and ACCC are currently investigating. They've sought advice from the review panel. They've sought evidence from the review panel of what they had collected in their investigations. I understand those investigations from those federal bodies are ongoing, and the department will continue to liaise to ensure we're kept up to date.
What was the last occasion that the department engaged with either ORIC or the ACCC to ascertain a status update?
I understand there was a request from ORIC that came through, I would say, a couple of weeks ago.
Longer, but 3 or 4 weeks ago.
3 or 4 weeks ago, a request came through from ORIC for further information,
and
which has been provided.
And the ACCC?
I'm not sure in particular.
Not aware of any interactions with the ACCC at the moment. If there is any, I can provide that on notice.
I go to the grant line again. The Minister has said that there are 2 organisations conducting current investigations. Can I confirm, does the Minister have any evidence or has the Minister received any direct information from the ACCC to confirm that they are conducting any sort of investigation?
Not received directly. I understand the review panel has spoken to ACCC when they formed their view that a referral was warranted. I understand they have, and I'm not sure if the department itself has. That is the case, that the review panel found sufficient evidence to refer to ACCC and had communicated with the ACCC.
Stake on the ACCC for the moment, because if neither the Minister nor the Department have received information from the ACCC confirming that they are conducting an investigation, there's one of the 2 investigations that are preventing the government from providing funding back to the APY Arts Collective. Will the Minister undertake to engage with the ACCC as quickly as possible to discover if they are in fact conducting any investigation or not?
Do we know that I'm advised that the department has been in contact with both agencies and as far as the department is aware and has advised me, those investigations are still active and of course, they're federal authorities. They have no obligation to necessarily report to us on their investigations, but the department has had communications with both agencies, and as far as we are aware, both of those investigations are still current.
Can I clarify? The Minister said in response to an earlier answer that the department had engaged with ORIC 3 or 4 weeks ago, but in that earlier answer wasn't aware of an engagement with the ACCC. So can I ask again when the department last had any engagement with the ACCC, or was it just the review panel when they made their initial referral to the ACCC that the Minister has relied upon for her last answer?
I'm advised they have made contact with the department. I have not had contact with them, but with the department, and we can take on notice the date of that last communication.
Thank you very much. Can I confirm then that it is these two investigations presumably resolving in a non-problematic way, that is the precondition that needs to be met before the government will reinstate funding to the APY Arts Collective if they are to?
We'll correct this if it's not correct, but I understand they were funded under the Arts Organisation program, which would require an application for them to receive funding under that program.
So last year, when we discussed this, either in estimates or in the chamber in question time, I can't recall which, but I got the distinct impression from the Minister's previous answers that at that time the Minister and the department had issued a legal letter to APY Arts Collective advising them that their funding would come to an end, and I'm pretty sure the Minister said at that time that that was a legal requirement so that depending on the outcome of the review that was then in place, the department would have legal basis at that point to suspend funding. Do I gather from the Minister's most recent answer that the current situation is that the state government has no ongoing funding relationship with the APY Arts Collective, but that they would need to apply for any future government funding?
Obviously, the outcomes of the ACCC and ORIC reviews are critical in what then flows from this. It's largely, again, until those reviews, the outcome of those reviews are known, we are not in a position to reinstate any funding. We did terminate the funding agreement that was with the APY Arts Centre Collective. I think it may have been, from recollection, an agreement that had a substantial notice period for us to terminate, something like 6 months from my recollection, and so we did that at that time.
Can I ask then, has the department or the government retained funds so that should the outcomes of those ACCC and ORIC considerations be positive, then the department would be able to, in that circumstance, restore funding to the APY Arts Collective, or is the government ruling out any retrospective funding and would only consider potentially prospective funding if those...
We'd have to get advice on the situation with the termination of the agreement and what flows from that. And of course, we still need to, as I said, wait for the results of the ORIC and the ACCC investigations.
Same budget line. Obviously, underneath all of this, there are a group of artists who, as we've discussed previously, are a primary concern. Last year, I asked the Minister whether she and the government would have a role in supporting these APY artists through what is a difficult time, to support them in fulfilling their commercial potential moving forward. The Minister replied at that stage, once the panel is stood up, I will be guided by and work with them as to what departmental support we can provide, particularly to those artists. She went on to suggest that the arts centres would continue with or without the collective, and she concluded saying, we just need to make sure we have the right support for these people to help them through it. In the years since, has any support been provided to these artists?
Yes, we continue to support Anangu artists through the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders strategy. There's a grant program that's part of that strategy, which channels more than $234,000 distributed to key Aboriginal-led groups. That was 23-24 for specific projects and initiatives involving artists working on the API lands, or for Anangu artists working elsewhere in the state.
Have any grants or other measures of support been provided to members of the API Arts Centres collective groups through that grants program the Minister's just identified, and if so, how many?
Sorry, you're asking about
So the Minister,
the members of our API Arts Centre collective?
yes, so the artists who are most directly affected by the withdrawal of support and the cloud hanging over the APY collective, those artists, I'm wondering whether any of them have been the beneficiaries of the grant program that the Minister identified related to the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander Arts Strategy.
Take it on notice.
The people, the individuals.
No, we'd have to take that on notice.
Thank you. Has the Minister spoken with or met with any of the artists engaged with the APY collective whose reputations, livelihoods and careers are affected by this matter?
The investigations into the APY Arts Centre collective, undertaken by the Independent Review, now referred to ACCC and ORIC, is looking at the organisation and the leadership of the organisation. In terms of the artists, they should have no concern about their own reputation. The artists that came forward and gave evidence, I commend them on doing that. It was a difficult situation for everyone involved. I would like to see the ACCC and ORIC investigations concluded as soon as possible so people can certainly move on. Until that time, we are faced with the situation of waiting for ORIC and ACCC to resolve their investigations, and I certainly do support all of those artists who have faced challenges during a very difficult period.
Thank you. I've got one more question on this line. So, wondering, given that one of the key features of the APY Arts Centre collective model was that a high proportion of the funding from sales of their work is returned to community, has the Minister had or has the Department offered any briefing on the ongoing impact to those communities of the reduced overall revenue from sales since the government withdrew its support from the collective?
I'm not aware of reduction in sales, so I can't comment on that.
I'm sure we'll come back to that issue on another occasion, but I'd like to move on to, well, it's the same budget line actually, grants and subsidies, but a different topic. And I've just got a few questions about the South Australian Museum. When will the Premier's review of the South Australian Museum be finalised?
It's currently on foot. The panel is currently undertaking their work. I think the Premier stated in his estimates that we're hoping for a report around September, and I concur with that. Of course, you're aware that the panel comprises of not only Damien Walker, the Chief Executive of DPC, but also our Chief Scientist for South Australia, Professor Craig Simmons, and the Chief Executive Officer of the Queensland Museum, Dr Jim Thompson. They're undertaking work now, engaging with various stakeholder groups and looking at the various issues we asked them to look at in terms of research functions and curatorial capabilities, repatriation, engagement with First Nations communities, collections management, contemporary approaches to displays, exhibitions and public access to the collection, including digitisation, contemporary approaches to how the museum can provide education and knowledge sharing, which is aligned to the curriculum and early learning frameworks, and the best possible delivery of public value to South Australians, ensuring the museum is using its resources to deliver best outcomes for audiences. Obviously, that's a fairly extensive piece of work, and we certainly look forward to the results of that review.
I thank the Minister for the fairly comprehensive reply, but I just may have missed it. I apologise if I did, but was there an expected date by which the review is expected to be completed?
As I said, the Premier indicated in his estimates that the panel were expected to provide some information by September.
September, okay. Can the Minister advise how often or how many times that group has met?
Of how often they have met, I will take that on notice. I'll just head over to in terms of the stakeholders that they have met and are meeting through, particularly this month and next month. Obviously the board chair and the CEO. There's been meetings or will be meetings with representatives of the South Australian universities, representatives of a group, I guess colloquially known as the Save the Museum group. I'm sure there's a better name for it, but that group. And all South Australian Museum employees will have an opportunity to contribute to the review. They're independently facilitated forums through June and July potentially. But in terms of how many times the panel themselves have met, I'm advised there have actually been 5 to 6 meetings so far.
Thank you. When the review panel was appointed, the Premier and the Minister, I think, issued a press release, maybe even had a press conference, identifying that there was a pause on the restructure, which would be particularly relevant for the staff whose jobs were being restructured. Given that, as I understand it, one of the reasons for the restructure was related to cost, and that the new restructure, the new structure was designed to have a somewhat less expensive model, is there a cost that has been identified of the maintenance of the current positions from what would have been, I think, a date in May or June until at least September? Is there a cost that's been identified that the museum has been funded for as a result of this period of pause?
Yeah, those costs are within their current operating budget. I don't have any further information on any specifics.
Has there been any supplementation sought or provided to the museum for their 2023-24 operating budget?
No. I advise that through 23-24 there might have been various supplementations through that year, but nothing specific in relation to supplementing for the restructure.
Can I then ask you, and if you don't have the detail, I'm very happy for it to be on notice, if we could have the detail of any supplementation or approved deficits for the museum over the last financial year?
Yeah, we can provide that information. It'll obviously come out in their annual report, but we'll take that on notice.
Thank you very much. Staying on the same budget line, can I ask, there was some controversy in relation to the well, controversy in the sense that there were questions over whether it would continue, and I understand Dr. Gamester has and the Minister has confirmed that it's certainly the desire that it be continued, but I understand there was some hiccups in relation to the program of returning Aboriginal remains to country. Is that program on foot again? Is that program currently operating, or is that still on pause while the staff matters are being sorted out?
No, that program continues. That program continues, and the proposed structure actually included an increase in the number of positions that are responsible for the care of the First Nations collections, which include ancestral remains and secret and sacred objects. The museum has confirmed, and I certainly concur with this, that the museum has no intention of reducing its commitment or services for First Nations communities and stakeholders. Very much the museum is a caretaker for what is a culturally and globally significant collection of First Nations material, and it intends to maintain those services and the accessibility of the Family History Unit continue to do so.
Are the people who have been doing that work still doing that work?
Not in terms of any structural changes, there's no change because of any structural changes. I don't know day-to-day movements of various staff members, but it is business as usual.
So one more topic while we're on the museum. In relation to the restructure project, I note that Dr. Gamester confirmed to the Budget and Finance Committee that DPC was providing a dedicated change management resource. In the House, I recently asked whether that was in the form of a dedicated change manager and at what cost. And I got a response on notice from the Minister recently. The Minister said that under the service level agreement, there was the provision of strategic human resource industrial advice in relation to structural reviews, i.e. restructures. I think I've quoted the Minister accurately there. Can the Minister articulate exactly what support was provided by DPC to the museum for what has been described elsewhere by Dr. Gamester as a dedicated change management resource to support the restructure? I'm wondering, was it a person on secondment, was it a grant, or was it some other sort of provision? Did DPC pay for a third party to go and do some work with the museum? In what way was that support provided?
The service level agreement that DPC has with the museum provides corporate support, so it includes, as you mentioned, and I think was in my answer to you, provision of strategic human resources and industrial advice, and there was no additional cost to the museum for those services provided by DPC. I understand the museum may have engaged contractors directly, which I can separately take on notice in terms of that, if that was in fact the case.
And in doing so, I appreciate the Minister taking that on notice. Again, I draw to the Minister's attention Dr. Gamester's evidence to Budget and Finance Committee of the Parliament, in which he said the department has supported us to appoint a dedicated change manager. Yes, I appreciate the Minister's got the information that she's got, but the quote from Dr. Gamester doesn't quite reconcile. There may be an explanation, and I look forward to the Minister, I assume, taking that broad question on notice.
I'll ask Mr. Hunter to elaborate if he's able to.
Thank you. So the department has provided a range of sort of change management support in the form of resources to the South Australian Museum. So whilst it's not a dedicated change manager person under that corporate services agreement that the Minister described, we have provided change management support to the museum in the form of the corporate services that the department provides to the South Australian Museum. So it may have just been characterised in a different way, perhaps.
Look, I thank you. I think it's easy to picture if there was a person with expertise who was working on North Terrace at the museum, then that's one thing. What you just described as change management support in the form of resources or in the form of corporate services, does that mean there were some people on call within DPC available to the museum who, if they had questions, or was it somebody who was leading a project for the restructure but sitting within DPC rather than sitting on North Terrace?
Department of the Premier and Cabinet provides people and culture support to the museum under a service level agreement. So they're people embedded within the Department of the Premier and Cabinet that essentially provide that advice in relation to change management and industrial relations and those sorts of things to the South Australian Museum. So they're not on secondment, but they provide those services to them from the department.
I think the confusion here must arise from the fact that the museum minutes record that they were seeking a dedicated change management support, and Dr. Gamestow and us said that they had received a dedicated change manager. He said to appoint a dedicated change manager. So there may be, again, some other explanation. The sort of support you've just described doesn't sound like that, but maybe was there one specific person in DPC HR who was specifically dedicated to helping them, or from your understanding was the DPC support that more broad?
I'll leave this up to the Minister's discretion, but the question should be directed to the Minister, and I won't allow a conversation between you and the public servants.
Is there anything you are able to add to that?
No, I think you've described it accurately in terms of there's a range of people within the department that provide change management services, and the change management services have been provided in that way rather than a dedicated person.
Thank you. I apologise, I didn't mean to direct to the officer. I move to, well, same budget line, page 30, grants and subsidies, but a different topic. In relation to the Adelaide Festival, did the Adelaide Festival overrun its budget last year? And is it now, I've been advised that it's been told the festival has to make significant savings for the next festival?
For this financial year, if you're referring to 23-24 financial year, we still have 5 more days left. So I don't think their financial statements would have been prepared yet. I'm not able to answer that question at the moment.
All right, so can I ask, has the Minister received any advice or feedback that, notwithstanding there are 5 days left within which there may be some remarkable efficiencies that might yet be achieved, has the Minister received any advice or feedback that the Adelaide Festival may be at risk of overrunning its 23-24 budget and therefore having a corresponding challenge in meeting a reduced budget in the 24-25?
I'm advised that the department is not aware of any, and I'm not aware of any advice coming through on their budget situation at the end of this financial year.
Let's hope it's just a rumour then. Has the Adelaide Festival reported a shortfall in sponsorship or the loss of any major donors ahead of the 2025 Adelaide Festival? And if that is something that has come back to the Minister or the Department, are they giving consideration to making up such a shortfall from a significant multi-year sponsor?
On notice, I am aware there may have been a couple of sponsors, I don't know the total figure, that may have had concerns with the Writers' Week program. I think the year before sorry, not this festival we've just had, I think it was the one before, but I can take that on notice.
Thank you. We will move to a different line. If we go down 3 lines from grants and subsidies to the net cost of providing services. Did the Minister attend the Cannes Film Festival this year? I And can the Minister advise what other destinations she travelled to on this trip and what was the purpose of the travel?
I can. So the 2.5 days, maybe, at the Cannes Film Festival was with a program being run by the Adelaide Film Festival. We had an Adelaide Film Festival spotlight down at Cannes. We took 10 South Australian filmmakers to the market at Cannes, which was an amazing opportunity for those filmmakers. There was a screening of 5 works in production there. It is, I would say, the largest and most important film market in the world. So to provide those filmmakers with that opportunity, I've spoken to one of them in recent days who was there, who was very appreciative of the opportunity. We had 5 of the 5 works in progress. One was Kangaroo Island. We had Timothy David there. Lesbian Space Princess, we had Emma Hobbs and Layla Vargas there. Sandy Cameron presented Mockbuster. Ben Galotta presented Iron Winter. Kelly Schilling presented With or Without You. There were also a number of workshops that were organised by Matt Kesting at the Adelaide Film Festival with people from South by Southwest, the Vienna Film Festival. There was certainly a good deal of networking and learning provided to those filmmakers that were there. The other filmmakers there were Travis Akbar, Lisa Scott, Josh Trevorrow and Matt Vesely and Nara Wilson. Nara was the one I spoke to the other day. So there was the Cannes element. There was a couple of days in, 4 or 5 days in the UK, featuring particularly in the Hay Festival in Wales, where we had an Adelaide Writers spotlight in the Hay Festival. Again, that was a fantastic opportunity to feature Adelaide Writers Week in what is, I think, the most prestigious of literary festivals around the world. We had a focus on Adelaide Writers Week, which included a range of sessions within their Writers Week, including our own Pip Williams had a session in there for her literary Dictionary of Lost Words, and of course we've had the State Theatre production of that, and I understand film rights have been acquired by another incredible South Australian filmmaker, producer in Lisa Scott through her Highview Productions company as well. So certainly that trip was well worth the spotlight internationally on a global stage for our Adelaide Writers Week Festival and our film festival, which I think really, to me, indicated really indicated to me how well known we are for our arts and cultural sector around the world, and I think it's a good thing for us to know that we are held in such high regard by some of these globally renowned festivals.
Thank you. I appreciate the Minister's detailed description of the trip. Can the Minister advise whether within that itinerary were there speeches and public engagements where the Minister had the opportunity to personally be selling and spruiking South Australia to the world, or indeed media interviews?
Yes, I had a media interview in London, and I spoke at a Adelaide Film Festival breakfast at Screen Australia, which has a base at the Cannes Film Festival, and I also was able to introduce on the stage a panel that included former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd talking about his new book on Xi Jinping, and took that opportunity to encourage all those in the audience to come to Adelaide in March for our Writers' Week.
The mind boggles. Can I ask who travelled with the Minister and what was the total cost of the trip?
Miss Beck Bates, who's sitting right next to me, and my chief, Joel Wemmer, and we will proactively disclose those costs as soon as we are able to within that period required by, within that period that's required.
I think the member for Unley might have questions.
Member for Unley.
Thank you, sir. Minister, are you able to advise what the private spend on film production was for the 2023-24 year and what you're expecting for the 24-25 year in South Australia?
Are you referring to a particular budget line, Member for Unley?
Yes, that is budget line. Perhaps you can help me there, John.
Page 29. No, actually, it's, yes, page 29 in the objectives. It's creative industries, and that goes specifically to film, noting that the DIS creative industries portfolio has been mogged into this page, and I think the Treasury papers are certainly not identifying too many highlights, but under the net cost of providing services, which was the current line, that includes the operation of engagement with the Film Festival and the SA Film Corporation, I understand, certainly in terms of policy advice.
Clarification on the member what his question was.
The question was, there's a 10% rebate that is paid for South Australian production to people that are producing films here. So there's a budget amount allocated for that. So the question is, how much private sector investment did that fund generate on film production in South Australia in 2023-24, and what are you expecting it to generate in 2024-25?
We don't have that information either for 23-24, given the year's not finished yet, and I'm not sure we have any budgeted figure for 24-25
Before it's leveraged privately.
of what's leveraged privately. I'm not able to answer that question, I'm afraid.
Usually there's an estimate provided in budget papers for the current year. You don't have an estimate.
Well, I think the Minister's answered the question.
Yeah, if you can point me to that.
In budget papers and every other portfolio, there's an estimate of what's been spent.
You're asking how much private money's... You're asking...
and
Member for
what's,
Unley, Member for Unley, order. You're asking how much private money's been leveraged on the back of some government spending, and the Minister's indicate she doesn't have that money.
Consequence.
I think your
of how much
colleague's trying to help you,
government money
Member for Unley.
accompanies that private money. So I find it extraordinary that the Minister's not able to answer the question as to what the estimate is for the year of that allocation of 10% rebate that matches that private spend.
I don't have that information available to me.
Right.
Member for Morialta.
Well, can I go to page 31, the performance and activity indicators? And on the same point, previously in budget papers, before the machinery of government change, DIS Creative Industries had performance indicators. They haven't carried over into the new presentation under Arts SA. Previously, DIS had an indicator, number of creative projects supported and number of creative industry events, programs and seminars. Was it an oversight that they haven't been carried over, or was it an active decision? And I guess, will they be returned next year? Grants and subsidies.
Expect Bates to explain.
So while in the Department for Industry, Innovation and Science, all of those activity indicators were individual projects supported through the Music Development Office, whereas the reporting through Arts South Australia and DPC doesn't itemise all of those grants in their programs. So to do that for one program without doing it for all the programs would have not been a true representation of that budget line. And the activity indicators were specific to the St Paul's Creative Centre, which closed.
So the The activity indicators no longer exist, the St Paul's no longer existing has an impact, but I make the point on page 31, we've got the number of paid seats and unpaid seats at Country Arts SA attendances. I mean, get the sense that the department can create whatever indicators it wants, but maybe more important than that is the grants and subsidies line, which we've spent a lot of time on, so I'll go back to it. That grants and subsidies line of 135 million for the budget the year ahead, the 133 million for the year last year, that's basically the sum of the arts line from last year and the creative industries line from last year, albeit that I think creative industries was mogged on the 1st of October. So I think the first couple of months of last year, the creative industries expenditure wouldn't be reflected here. I think it's reflected and represented in the DIS line. But yes, so, okay, so
As in
that is
from-
basically the
yes.
sum of DIS Creative Industries plus Arts SA.
Yes.
So that grants and subsidies would be the budget line specifically that the member for Unley was referencing before. I wonder if, given that Creative Industries has previously captured the information in relation to the amount of subsidised work generating private funding in film, and I imagine there would be an expectation going forward that would be the same. Would the Minister perhaps be able to take the member for Unley's question on notice on the basis of it being part of that budget line?
I can take it on notice and provide an answer if we're able to, absolutely. Information that might be useful to the member for Unley. What's our investment?
Are there any further questions? Oh, sorry, Minister, are you still in the
I'm
process
wondering
of
if there's
answering?
any other
Sure.
information that might be useful to the member for Unley in terms of government investment, given we don't have the private investment figures. Might not help the member, but the SAFC ABC partnership, which we funded 5.2 million originally, and there's an additional $7.2 million in this year's budget. That first round of 5.2 million, I'm advised that the fund injected an estimated $21.8 million into the state's economy across production, post-production, digital and video and visual effects, the PDV. It supported 328 South Australian screen jobs across 6 ABC productions completed or underway in the state, and that was the first stage, the original $5.2 million. I don't know if that might assist the member.
Got a question on a new topic. Same budget line, grants and subsidies. State Opera is about to celebrate its 50th year. Can the Minister advise what plans, if any, the government has to support State Opera to celebrate its 50th year? Noting last year I think we had a bit of extra support for the Festival Centre, and in fact the government heralded its funding for the fire safety improvements to the Festival Centre as also being a celebration of its 50th year. Does the government have any plans to support State Opera in its 50th year and the programs that will be available in 2026?
Yes, so the 50th year for State Opera is in 2026, and had a recent meeting with Mark Taylor and Ashley Miller, the chair of State Opera, in the last couple of weeks, discussing plans for their 50th. So yes, they will receive government support. They obviously have their operating grant. Very pleased to announce the Arts Investment Fund as well, an extra roughly $5 million a year that will talk to our cultural policy that's coming out. So I'm sure the State Opera will come to us with their plans in more concrete form that we'll be able to support.
Can the Minister advise whether funding from that Arts Investment Fund will be able to support State Opera to continue producing the 3 major productions per year that it currently does, on the basis that, from what I've heard from at least one member of the State Opera Board, the State Opera, under its current funding, may have to reduce from 3 productions to 2, given cost escalations in recent years?
we'll continue to work with State Opera, and I do engage with them quite closely. I was unfortunately not able to go to Candide, which I understand was an excellent production. It was whilst I was overseas. But we certainly will continue to engage with State Opera. The guidelines for the Arts Investment Fund are being worked through at the moment by the department. So I await receiving a draft of those, but certainly will continue to engage with State Opera. They do excellent work, and I fully support them, particularly going into their 50th year. I think it'll be an exciting time. They do excellent work, particularly in our regions as well. We recently had them out in the Limestone Coast at a number of schools with frog prints. They do engage and work quite closely with getting regional tours out and with country arts as well. Education department provided a grant for that frog prints performance down south in the Limestone Coast, but they do excellent work.
Thank you. Happy to go to page 15 and the investing expenditure summary. The Takari, the Centre for First Nations Cultures, which we understand has been put on pause, identifies that in 23-24 there's an estimated results suggesting that $20.7 million has been expended on that project. Is the Minister able to advise what that $20 million was spent on?
Because that program sits with the Premier.
So in relation to Takari, that all the investing and the operational sitting with the Premier and none with Arts?
None with Arts.
So the Minister hasn't been involved in discussions with philanthropists or business or private partners over and above whatever the Premier's been doing?
No, I have not.
All right. Can I just clarify, the Assistant Director who was originally employed on the Takari project, is that position also under the Premier's responsibility or Arts SA?
Premier.
Okay. Do we know if that Director's employment is continuing or?
I'm not aware. Either way, I'm not aware.
All right. On the same page, the Cultural Institutions Storage Facility, Cultural Institution Collection Storage, I'm relatively confident that still remains within Arts SA? Yes, it does. Excellent. So is the Minister able to advise us of what the most recent advice the Minister has regarding completion dates and the facility being able to actually take and store the collections?
The estimated completion date for the facility is in December 2025. And I want to actually thank Mr Hunter, who's done a lot of work with the Project Steering Committee to rescope, and it now, as of I think the March meeting of the Project Steering Committee, there was an agreement on endorsing the rescope facility, which now allows the recommencement of the design changes and the project delivery. So DIT has negotiated a 2-year extension on Netley Commercial Park, with the facility to be completed in, as I said, December 2025, and the collections to be relocated to the new building by June 2026. But I'm very pleased we have an on-budget solution to the cultural storage facility now.
What is the cost of that extended, the extended rental of the existing location, and who's bearing that cost?
As I understand, those cultural institutions that are storing their items at Netley Commercial Park will continue to pay rent over that period of time and come within their existing budget.
So that rental, is the Minister able to advise whether it is at the same rate as it was up until the 30th of June, as in, well, next week, which was when they were supposed to be out originally. So we've got 2 years extension. Is the 2 years extension at the same rate that it has been, or has there been the escalation in cost there that everyone else paying rent seems to have had?
We can provide information. We'll have to get that from Duke. They negotiated the lease, but we can certainly take that on notice and provide that information to you.
The Minister said that the project has been rescoped. Is there a difference in the amount of collections material, in the volume of collections material from the original plans, or has the project been rescoped in different ways? Are the institutions able to still have all the stuff they expected to be in the new facility, or are they going to have to come to some other arrangement for some of their collection?
The original design had collections from Netley Commercial Park, Netley 262, the North Terrace locations, and the AXA Southern Store. This revised design will cover the collections from Netley Commercial Park within the scope of the project.
So what is the impact then on not being able to transfer the collections from the other sites, and which institutions are going to be disappointed in not having, which institutions use those rented facilities that they're going to still have to keep using now?
The Southern Store is an AXA-owned property, so that will continue, and I don't think there's much concern on that. In fact, I think the view is that it aids on the risk minimisation by having multiple storage facilities. So I think that that situation is quite appropriate. Netley 262 contains collections from various cultural institutions, and that will remain.
I think all of them have something there.
Yep, so that will remain.
Can I move to page 29 and the highlights, particularly in relation to the Artists at Work task force to address work insecurity? Has the Minister met with this task force? How many people are on it, and how often has it met?
I went to their first, must have been their first meeting or their second meeting. I have met with them. I think there are 27 members of the task force. It was being chaired by Alison Lloyd-Wright, and I want to thank Nick Linky, who was a member of the task force, who's now been appointed as chair for the remainder of the task force work. 27 members, and yes, I have met with them. And what was your other question?
How often has it met?
It's had 4 meetings so far.
And when will it conclude its work?
Do we have an estimate? I'm advised there are 2 more scheduled meetings. They will then work on their recommendations and provide that to me in due course, but I don't have a fixed date for that.
It may just be an oversight. I note, though, that there's no target listed on page 29 in relation to delivering outcomes from the task force. The task force is now meeting. It will produce a report. But is the government preparing to deliver any practical outcomes from their work? Is there any budget to deliver on outcomes of the work of this task force?
Yeah, we need to obviously wait for those recommendations to come through before we can give consideration to them.
And so when does the Minister expect that she will respond to whatever recommendations are produced by this task force, noting that I asked a similar question 2 years ago and she was hoping that it would be by the end of the 22-23 financial year?
Yes, like I said, we've got the 2 additional meetings. They will work on their recommendations and provide that to me. We'll then consider those recommendations. I don't have a time frame, but certainly keen to see some practical outcomes coming out from that task force.
I have some questions about indexation supplementation. It's on budget paper 1, page 4, or otherwise we can stay on page 30, grants and subsidies. How many arts organisations received supplementation for indexation funding last year, and are they all captured in the new policy for the years ahead?
Yes, those ones that received a supplementation from DTF were the Adelaide Fringe, the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra and the Australian Dance Theatre received supplementation from DTF.
So just those ones and not the others?
Not the others. For the 2022-23 financial year, we were able to provide, in this current financial year, a bonus payment to effectively equate to that supplement that those other organisations were not eligible for.
So is it the government's position then that those arts not-for-profits won't be part of this group of social services providers that have received this ongoing benefit?
We've got the eligibility criteria that's been determined by DTF, which has limited the number of arts entities that are within scope to receive the supplement. Of course, they receive the indexation of 2.5%, and that continues. So those guidelines are, and the eligibility criteria is within DTF. We will obviously consider any support we are able to fund that would assist those organisations in due course.
In relation to the Arts Investment Fund, the Minister said earlier that the guidelines were still being worked out. This is budget paper 5, page 56. Have there been any criteria established for this fund? Is it expected that there's going to be an application process? And if so, when will funds be available for application?
Yes, what we want to see from the Arts Investment Fund is targeted investment in strategic initiatives across the arts, culture and creative industry sector. It's a substantial amount, I think, of about $5 million a year, so $780 in this current financial year, ending in 5 days' time, $4.8 million in 24-25, and that's indexed and ongoing, which is of great benefit to the arts to get that new money. We will feed into the outcomes we would like to see from the cultural policy. That's still being worked on at the moment. What we do want to see is applications coming in that I think speak to what is coming through, I think I can say this, what is coming through on the cultural policy, which is the sector and the public's desire to see arts for everyone, everywhere. So we want to, I guess, be working on those guidelines to ensure that it's encouraging accessible artistic opportunities, potentially youth arts, and other strategic investments that does talk to the cultural policy and what we're trying to achieve with that. But those guidelines and the governance structure are being worked on at the moment by DPC. We're working on the basis it will be something like the Digital Investment Fund, so that recommendations are made to me for decision.
Page 29.
Very quickly, Moriarty.
Thank you. So
And if I could be so bold, very quickly answer, Minister.
The targets in relation to the arts, culture and creative sector policy, when is that work concluding, and have any, and if so, how many stakeholders provided feedback to the Minister with concerns about that policy?
In terms of numbers of engagements, we had a series of face-to-face and online workshops where there were a total of 238 people engaged. We went out with the Your Say survey received over 1,600 survey responses from that, and we also received 80 written submissions. The department's working through that at the moment. It'll be later this year we'll be able to release the cultural policy.
The allotted time has expired. I declare the examination of proposed payments to Department, Premier and Cabinet and the administered items for that department complete. Thank the Minister, thank your advisors. I understand you have somewhere very important to be. But thank you for coming in. And the member for Adelaide has a motion.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the committee do now adjourn until tomorrow at 9 a.m.
It's been moved. I'll put the question. Those in favour say aye. Against, I declare it carried. The committee stands adjourned until 9 o'clock tomorrow.